Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm your host, Sam, and I'm back again with a very exciting episode that is lined up for you today. So, before diving into today's topic and announcing the name of our guest, here's a very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. So, use of information is at your own risk. All right, once again, friends, welcome back to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And today we have got a very timely and crucial topic to discuss on. That is, how will the new J-1 skills list transform your immigration journey? So, friends, if you are or someone you know is a J1 visa holder, then watch this session till the end because this new J1 skills list could transform your immigration journey. So, today we are diving into the new J1 skills list and also understand what it means for your future in the US, how it could transform your immigration journey. So, it could be a game changer for those looking to extend their stay or transition to other visas. So, to break it all down and give us an expert advice, we are thrilled to have an experienced immigration attorney with us. Attorney Poonam Gupta, with over 25 years of experience in immigration law, plus a solid background in intellectual property and litigation. She has become a go to expert in her field, and her deep understanding of US immigration makes her a trusted advisor for businesses and individuals alike. So, without any further ado, let me welcome our today's very special guest, Attorney Poonam Gupta. Welcome, Poonam. It's truly an honor and pleasure having you with the show again. How are you doing?
I'm great, Sam. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure being back on the show. So, looking forward to addressing all the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Poonam, I would also like to know, before starting our today's session, that what our viewers can expect from today's episode.
So, the this is the first time in 15 years that the Department of State has updated this J1 skills list. Why is J1 skills list important? Because this determines which individuals from which countries in which area are subject to a 2 year home residency requirement. And identifying what that means changes what the immigration journey for an individual can be. Is it something that they can stay in the US from the time that they come here? Or is it that they need to take a break, go back home for a couple of years, and then come back? Or is it that they can stay here, but they need to apply for a visa? So, what path they take changes depending on what's on the skills list. And as I said before, this is the first time in 15 years that the government has updated this list. They are committed to updating this every 3 years. So we will see. Hopefully, they will keep up with the times going forward. This update has been a long time coming for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Poonam, for answering this thing. And I hope our folks are also watching us on different platforms from YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on X as well. So, friends, stay tuned, and I'm sure this is going to be a very informative session. So, don't forget to post your questions from whichever platform you have joined us. And meanwhile, I would also like to begin with my very first question. So, yeah, Poonam, the new J1 skills list has been updated recently. So, can you explain what exactly this list is and why it is so important for foreign nationals looking to come to the US?
Sure. So, J1 skills list, it's a list of countries which is designated by the Secretary of State as being the countries that are subject to the 2 year home residency requirement. That is the basic crux of the purpose of this list. And then the 2 year home residency requirement is that anyone who is subject to that 2 year rule or 2 year requirement has to go back to their home country after the end of the J1 period before they can apply for an or they before they can transfer or move to an H1 status or an L1 status, or if they are sponsored by someone in their families to apply for adjustment of status. So it is a critical break that is mandated by law depending on which country you're coming from.
All right. So, Poonam, do you think that these changes will make it easier or harder for G1 visa holders when they are navigating their immigration journey?
So, for individuals, so to be very, very clear, the change that has happened in this skills list, in this updated skills list, is that the Department of State has uh, removed certain countries from the skills list completely. They have, and on the other hand, they've also added some countries that were previously not on the skills list. What they have not done is look at what skills are on that skills list. So each category, each occupation has certain skills for that are on the skills list. So the government has not touched the skills list, but they have updated only the country list. So that is what's changed, and that is what is impacting or going to impact people. So for individuals who were previously from countries that were previously on the skills list that have now been removed, it's definitely going to be easier because now they do not have to take a break in their professional journey and go back home for 2 years or request a waiver. They can easily, with retroactively, apply to switch to an H-1B or an L-1 or an adjustment of status without that break. So for them, life will be easier. But for those individuals who are from countries that were previously not on the skills list, right, but now are on the skills list, for them, it will suddenly be a whole new world that they were not aware of. And they will need to be aware of having to take this break in their career or having to go back or familiarize themselves with the waiver process. So, depending on which country they're from, it may become easier, it may become harder.
All right. So, Poonam, we have lots of viewers from India. So, what is the update for India? Is it in that country list or what's the update for that?
So, India is actually the great news for Indians. India has been removed from the skills list, which means that previously Indian nationals had to apply for a waiver, and now they do not. The big caveat here is that if their J-1 program was funded using government funds or government source of funds, and they have an annotation on their visa or their DS 2019 that their funding is from a government agency, then this update in the skills list does not impact them. But if their funding was not from a government source, then they no longer have to worry about the 2 year home residency requirement or about getting a waiver. And retroactively, they suddenly have this requirement disappear overnight.
All right. So I think that's wonderfully explained from your end. And I think moving ahead, we should also talk about some specific industries also. So, Poonam, how do the recent updates to the J1 skills list impact some specific industries? For example, are fields like healthcare, technology, or education seeing a bigger push for skilled workers?
As I mentioned, this skills list is not industry or skill specific. It is this update rather. It's specific to the countries. Typically, there are a lot of Indian and Chinese in healthcare and technology sectors. So the fact that these individuals from these countries no longer have to go back home or request a waiver will definitely help these industries, help employers in these industries retain their top talent because they will no longer have to work around trying to get a waiver or wait for that individual to complete their 2 year home residency requirement.
All right. And meanwhile, Poonam, we can see our viewers. We have Purnima, Mohammed, Rohan as well. And Purnima is saying that yes, some disciplines should be exercised. And Mohammed is saying that Muhammad Ali Gori is here, software engineer. I think that's great. We are getting
Welcome.
this chance yeah, to interact with you all. And Purnima and Muhammad Ali, we would like to ask, any questions or any topic that you would like to know about today's topic or anything about immigration, please feel free to post them on comment section. Poonam is here for an hour and we are definitely going to take them up. So yeah, please keep on posting your questions or your doubts and we will take them up.
So I don't know, Sam, if you see Rohan's question.
Just let me check. Oh yeah, absolutely. I can also see that. If you want, we can take that up.
Sure.
Great. So Rohan is here with the question that with the updated J-1 skills list, there are now certain fields of expertise that are prioritized. If my skills aren't on the list, will that make it harder for me to qualify for a J-1 visa, or are there still ways around it?
So, Rohan, as I've been saying, this update is not about the skills. This update is about countries. If
Mhm.
your country is not on the skills list, then, but um, I'm not worried because then, as long as you're going in the private sector, then it shouldn't matter. In terms of will it make it harder for you to qualify? Maybe there may be more competition, but again, purely from an immigration perspective, it does not matter because they're not looking at the skills list. If you are from a country that was recently removed from the list, such as Brazil, India, or China, then it does not matter.
All right. So I hope Rohan, you got your answer. And we have other comments also from Purnima. I think, yeah. So it's a follow up comment, and she's saying that I'm still not hiring phase, but I was concerned.
Purnima, you may want to type out your entire question in one shot because it's unclear and provide some context for what you're asking because I'm unsure of what the exact question is. Are you saying that you're having trouble hiring someone on a J-1 because they would be subject to a 2-year home residency requirement or something else? So please type out your entire question in one uh, instead of multiple chats, just once, and then happy to take it up again.
Absolutely. I hope, Purnima, you would do it as Poonam asked for. So, yeah, I think that would be easier, right, to have a bit detailed and explained answer. Question. And Muhammad Ali is saying that firstly, he commented that he's a software engineer. And then he's saying that I have a question how we can get a remote job. I am experienced web developer. And then he's saying that, dear host, do you know Jimny Barara? I'm so sorry, Muhammad Ali. I don't know about Jimny Barara. But Poonam, what do you want to say on this comment?
So, Mohammed, this is a discussion about J1s and the impact of the J1 skills list. I unfortunately am unable to help you get a remote job. I wish you the very best, but I don't have series of job listings that I can share out here or at any time. So I wish you the very best. If you have any J1 specific questions, more than happy to answer.
But Poonam, there's also very high demand question that most of our viewers are asking. That in US, what are some high demanding jobs that people can look for? So, is it some that can you can give guidance or you can advise them for like these jobs are in high demand in US?
The high demand jobs are typically ones that don't qualify for a visa. That's the unfortunate reality. So those are ones that typically do not have any category of visas. The ones that do qualify for visas, like H1, L1, all require certain skill sets and an employer. So the first thing is you identify what is your area of expertise and then look for open roles in your niche and then disclose to the employer that you need sponsorship. And depending on that employer's policies, they may or may not have a policy where they would be able to sponsor someone.
All right, all right. I think that's fine, and that's how only one needs to look. But Poonam, is it something that the one those who are very much high in demand jobs, those visas are not available? Is it so?
Or there are no visa categories, right? So it's typically manual labor jobs, but there are no visa categories. Most of the legal immigration piece is for skilled labor, for individuals who have at least a bachelor's degree and beyond.
Okay, all right. And I think here's a comment from Purnima, and she's saying that I have noted your phone contact, so I may come back later as I am not still aware of latest updates on these visa changes. But since I wanted to provide opportunities to those who is looking for a job, but I'm still not ready. This is only for um, information. I don't know why the next part is not visible. I tried to ask these questions. Thank you. So that's okay, Purnima. I think please keep on commenting and posting. And I think by watching this session, you'll definitely come up with so many knowledge and so many information. So I think, yeah, that would be great. And yeah, here we have another question, Poonam, that I would like to ask from you that can you give us an example of how the new J-1 skills list has already impacted someone's immigration journey based on a case that you have seen or heard about?
Sure. So I think the biggest impact will be for individuals who are from countries who have been removed from the skills list. So a student or a researcher or a professor from any of the countries that are from the list that have been removed from the list. And if you want a detailed list of what the countries are, what the changes are, you can follow my page on LinkedIn, and I posted about it this week. So there is a guide that gives a comprehensive list of the countries that are available. So please go ahead and check that out. But in terms of how someone's journey is impacted, so anyone who's from a country that was previously on the skills list and is no longer on the skills list, that country is no longer on the skills list. And some of the examples that I gave previously is Brazil, India, China. These are the high volume countries typically where a lot of people in the research arena come in, especially from India and China. And they were previously subject to the 2-year home residency requirement or had to get a waiver, which is definitely at least a few month process, but could take well over a year in some cases just to get all the approvals from different agencies. And as you can imagine, the impact 1 year delay has on someone, their career, is huge. So by removing those countries from the skills list, the government has opened a pathway for those people to stay in the United States and continue to contribute to the US economy without disrupting their professional journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I think now we have some few more questions from my end, and then we will shift again to our viewers' question. So Poonam, according to recent statistics, more than 300,000 J-1 visa holders enter the US each year. So with these new changes, what impact do you think that it will have on the number of applicants or approval rates?
The fact that, I mean, my sense is that there may be an influx from the countries that have gone off the skills list, but there may be a decrease in the number of people coming on a J-1 from countries that have now entered the skills list, that have now been added to the skills list. So that is the biggest. In terms of approval rates, I don't think that will change. The number of applicants may change because removing India and China, more particularly, from the skills list will open the doors for applicants from these countries to come to the US. And this may be a strategic, you know, policy initiative by the US government to attract more talent from these countries to help the US maintain its edge in technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but whether or not it pans out remains to be seen how it's implemented, especially under the DO administration. So we'll see how it all pans out. Right now, it's all a theoretical exercise, even though it's gone into effect. The immediate impact is on individuals who were previously required to obtain a waiver, but no longer have to. Um, Obviously, subject to if their program was not funded by the government.
Right, right, absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much, Poonam, for taking that question up and explaining these with patiently and completely in detail. So, moving ahead with my next question here is that we are seeing more US companies increasingly needing foreign talent for specialized roles. So, how does the updated list fit into this larger trend, and what does it mean for applicants in niche sectors?
So the US companies needing foreign talent is not something new. It's always been that way. And the big push all these years has been, I mean, the technology sector is a prime example where the bulk of engineers, if you will, in the tech sector were from India and China. But with the technology companies laying off more and more people, it's had a huge impact. So the updated list, I think, will benefit researchers
Mm-hmm.
disproportionately.
Mm-hmm.
Private sector, maybe, but researchers also, if they are subject, if their program is funded by the government, then it really may not change anything. But for researchers in the private sector, this will be a huge boon. So that's where I think we will see the biggest trend in terms of individuals who are in research or who are teaching, that
Mm-hmm.
they will benefit from this.
All right, all right. I hope it will definitely benefit them. And also, Poonam, there's been a concern about the impact of these changes on the cultural exchange aspect of the J-1 visa. So, I would like to know your thoughts on this.
The Nothing's changed on the skills list in with regards to the cultural exchange, except for countries that have now been added to the skills list. So again, as I mentioned, the complete list of countries is on my LinkedIn post, but countries that are now added to the J1 skills list will see a decrease in individuals who can come for cultural exchange. Previously, um, like if someone from India or China, for instance, came for cultural exchange, they would immediately become subject to a 2-year home residency requirement, which would have impacted their ability to think about a professional career in the US without first staying in their home country for at least 2 years. And the same is now going to be applicable to those countries that have been added to the J1 skills list. Um, the countries that have been removed from the J1 skills list, we will see a lot more of the cultural exchange aspect happening because of that lack of the J1 skills list, J1 lack of that country or removal of that country from the J1 skills list.
All right. So, Poonam, I think, friends, here we have Poonam Gupta's post that Poonam you were talking about. So, I think, yeah, friends, you can also go and connect with Poonam on Instagram also. I'm sure you'll get so much to learn from her post also, as these are the latest updates and the latest changes that we are
LinkedIn.
talking in today's episode.
Post
So,
from LinkedIn.
Yeah, this is a post from LinkedIn, and I'm not on Instagram yet,
oh, I'm
so
so
it's
sorry.
only LinkedIn.
I'm so sorry. By chance, I said Instagram, but I'm so sorry about that.
I
It's
know
like,
that is the platform of choice, TikTok and Instagram, but I'm not on those platforms.
Poonam, today's generation, they are more on Instagram, right? So whenever they talk about social media, they are like Insta or TikTok. So that's what it's on my tip of my tongue. But
Yeah, that's totally fine. At some point, maybe, but just not yet.
oh, right, right. But yeah, friends, you can also connect with attorney Poonam Gupta, and I think she posts everything on LinkedIn and with the latest update regarding immigration policies. So please go ahead and check out her LinkedIn profile. And yeah, I think that's all. But we have some more questions from viewers. But before taking that, I would also like to continue with the questions that I have. Yeah, this is the one that as the J1 skills list changes, do you foresee any challenges for applicants who have already started their J1 application process? Will they need to adjust to the new priorities?
Right. So people who are already in the J1 process, that are applying to come to the US on a J1, for countries that have been removed from the skills list, it opens up pathways that they may not have been aware of, that could have restricted them in the future. But for people, I think it is more detrimental, and people who are in the J1 process now from countries that have actually been added to the skills list, I think they need to stop and think about whether this is aligned with their personal priorities and what they intend to do, and whether J1 is actually going to serve the purpose that they thought it would. So they need to stop and revisit their path and their journeys. But for countries that have been removed,
Mm-hmm.
no change, only good news.
All right. I think that's great. And meanwhile, I would also like to take Harshdeep's comment. So he's saying that this is awesome and would have saved me a lot of time and grief. Many countries have been removed from the list, makes life easier for G1 research scholars without direct government funding, where a J1 waiver was often a formality but a slow and bureaucratic one.
Correct. Absolutely. Well said, Hardeep. This is definitely the J1 process was. Uh, I do not know of a situation where a J1 waiver was ever denied, but the pain of getting a J1 waiver is, it is a long process. It's full of bureaucracy on the home country side as well as the US side, and it takes months, if not well over a year, for some countries. It is not a 2 week turnaround. You apply for a waiver and you get it and you're done. No, it is a slow and a long process. And individuals whose J1s are funded by the government will unfortunately still continue to be subject to this, but those that are not funded by the government can benefit and can truly go ahead and live their lives without restriction. At least this restriction. There may be other restricting factors, but at least this hassle and this stress is gone from their lives.
All right. Thank you so much, Harshdeep, for your comment. I'm sure you got your answer. And thank you so much for commenting. And, if you have any follow up question or would like to share any information, then please feel free to comment them. And we are definitely going to take them up. Okay, Poonam, so here's another question that I would like to know. What are the key things that applicants should focus on now? In light of these changes, what are your top tips for anyone who is looking to apply for the J1 visa with the new list in effect?
I think the biggest thing that I would recommend people do with the new list is to think about whether or not, like, one, why did they select the J1 if they had a choice? Sometimes they may not have a choice.
Mhm.
The employer or the program that they're applying for, they only offered the J1, and that if that is the only choice, then their choice is taken away. But what is their path after J1? What is their journey after J1? Are they planning to come back to their home country, or are they planning to stay in the US? If they're planning to stay in the US, then how does the new skills list change their journey? If their country is no longer on the skills list, then it is no longer a restricting factor for them. But if their country is newly added to the list, then it may add hurdles and roadblocks to their journey that they previously did not know about or anticipate. And it behooves them to think about those roadblocks and hurdles before moving forward, or once they come to the US and then navigate around it. One of the ways may be, if you do need a waiver, to start that waiver process a lot sooner than you actually need it. So this is a key takeaway: stop, reflect, reassess, and then move forward.
Absolutely. And to our friends also, if anyone who is navigating the intricacies of visa applications or facing any legal challenges, or simply need guidance about any immigration policies, then please feel free to contact attorney Poonam Gupta on the given details. You can also email her on info@summit-legal.com. I would like to spell it out. That is info at summit hyphen legal.com. You can also visit our website, that is www.summit-legal.com. And the LinkedIn ID is also that we have shown you just now. So you can also go and check out her in that. So yeah, thank you so much, Poonam, for taking that up and explaining those questions in detail. Moving ahead, I would like to ask that with the global workforce increasingly becoming digital, so do you think the new J1 skills list will open doors for more tech related job categories like software development or cybersecurity?
Um, Maybe that depends on what the priorities for the new administration are, and if they tweak the J1 skills list again to add or remove certain categories. As of right now, the skills list is on this update of the skills list is restricted to the countries. There is no update to the actual skills that are listed on the skills list. So will the job open up in software development or cybersecurity? We don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
All right. Okay. I hope everything happens good and we can see more jobs in this sector because software development and cybersecurity is highly in demand. So we can hope for the
Yeah.
good. Yeah. All right. So, moving ahead with the next question, that is the J1 visa is often seen as a stepping stone to longer term immigration options. With the revised skills list, do you think that it will become easier or harder for J1 holders to transition to H1B or other visa categories?
It may. For individuals from countries such as India or China, it will definitely be easier. And switching to an H1 or an L1 or other visa categories without requesting a waiver or without going back home for a 2 year period will definitely impact and make their life so much easier. Where it will be harder will be the countries that are now added to the skills list. It is not something that they may have anticipated or planned for. And whatever plans they may have made, they may already be in the US in J1 status. And suddenly their plans are upended because their countries are now suddenly subject to the 2 year home residency requirement when they were not when they first started the J1. So their life will become harder.
All right. I think like staying informed, this can help them and working on this types of situation. So yeah, friends, it's very important to stay informed and keep yourself updated regarding all the new changes or all the new policies that are being implemented. I think that's the only way you can save yourself. So yeah, I think this is the question that I would also like to ask from you, Poonam. That anyone who has a 2 year home residency requirement because of a notation on their DS 2019 or their visa, does this change anything for them?
Maybe the biggest question is, what is the reason for that notation on their visa or the DS 2019? Is the notation because of government funding, or is the notation because they were from a specific country? If the notation is because they were from a specific country,
Mhm.
then if that country is no longer on the skills list, they're no longer subject to that requirement. But if the notation is because of government funding,
Mhm.
then they may still be subject to the home residency requirement. The quickest way, um, sorry, not the quickest way, but the surest way to identify whether or not this applies to you is to request an advisory opinion from the Department of State. Department of State is the only agency that can definitively state whether or not you are subject to the 2 year home residency requirement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think one should follow the official website instead of having the information from some random and, facing some challenges and getting in pitfalls. I think, yeah, and Poonam, meanwhile, we also have few more viewers who has joined us in today's episode. I can see Gorvi, Monali, and Vishnu. So welcome, friends, and it's lovely to have you. Okay, so let's take a question from Gauravi. So Gauravi is asking that if I have an offer from a sponsor but my skill isn't on the new list, would that affect my application or is the sponsor's support enough to overcome that challenge?
So, skills were not changed on this list, Gauravi. What was changed was only the countries. And if your country is still listed on the skills list, but your skill is not on the skills list, then you are not subject to the 2 year home residency requirement. This your The 2 year home residency requirement is irrespective of the sponsor. It is sponsor agnostic. It has nothing to do with the sponsor. This is entirely a government, you know, issue, whether or not the US government or your home country government determine that there is a need for such skills. That is all. There is nothing that a sponsor can add or detract from that list. So check out, like, depending on which country you're from and whether or not your program is funded by the US government. That's what would dictate uh, whether you would have, you would be subject to the 2 year home residency requirement or not.
Yeah, and Gauravi, please let us know from which country also you're watching us from. And moving ahead with Manali's question. So, Manali is asking that what is the significance of the updated exchange visitor skills list and how does it impact J1 visa holders regarding the 2 year foreign residence requirement under Section 212E of the Immigration and Nationality Act?
Monali, I think if you've been watching us for a while, that is all we've been talking about. The
Absolutely.
impact in a nutshell is which country you're from, bottom line. That determines under the new skills list whether you're impacted or not impacted, whether your country was on the skills list and remains on the skills list, or it was removed or it was added. Those are the three categories, and I have the comprehensive list of all those countries in my post. And I don't know, Sam, if it's possible to post a link to that LinkedIn post in the chat. But if you go to my profile for all those listening on LinkedIn, there is a complete list of what the, what the countries are.
Absolutely. And I would like to request from Control if you could also share that link of Poonam's LinkedIn profile so that at least we can, have that understanding and can have that place also where to sh- uh, go and see that post. Okay, so now I would like to take another comment from Vishnu. And Vishnu is saying that how does the Department of State determine which countries are added to or remain on the exchange visitors skills list, and what specific economic indicators such as GDP thresholds and migration rates are used to make these determinations?
Great question, Vishnu. And I wish there was transparency from any government, let alone the US government, on which parameters they're specifically looking for, if there is a way to identify or predict if a country falls above or below this threshold, they will get added or removed from the skills list. Those are decisions that are not disclosed, and those are, those policy initiatives are something that are within the US government purview, and they do not share them. So I do not have access to that information. I'm unable to provide you those insights. But great question. Thanks for asking and thanks for joining.
Wow. So I think Vishnu, you have got a compliment from Poonam's side, and it's really great, that your question is very good. But I think you should also continue by posting more questions so that we can take them up, and it's very interesting to take and talk about different topics as well. So yeah, I think thank you, Vishnu, also for your question and for your participation. Moving ahead with what if the J-1 is based on government funding? Does this update change anything for them?
Um, no, if the J1 is based on government funding, then the update in the J1 skills list does not change anything for them. They are still subject to the 2 year home residency requirement. They still may need um, a waiver from their respective country. The big caveat, if you will, to this is depending on the source of the government funding. If it is a US government funding, then it is up to the US government to decide whether or not they want that person to go back to their home country. It may be in US interest not to lose that person um, by making them subject to the 2 year home residency requirement. So, the best way to get clarity on this issue is to request an advisory opinion from the Department of State. So, someone who is unsure whether or not they will be subject because their program is funded by the government, then they should ask for an advisory opinion. What it does not change is where the J1 is based on government funding from the home country, because in those situations, a waiver would definitely be required because the home country is spending money to train you so that you can bring those skills back to the home country. And it is not in the home country's interest to let you stay in the US without getting recouped or without being compensated in some way for the amount of money and time and effort that they spend in training you in the US. So if your program is funded by your home country government, then a waiver most definitely would be needed. But if your J1 was funded by the US government, federal government, or state government, then you may not need a waiver. Ask for a advisory opinion from the Department of State to get clarity on your specific situation. This is not something any attorney can tell you. This has to come from the Department of State.
Wow, that was so insightful. I'm sure our viewers are loving your answers, Poonam, and you're being so, you know, detailed and explaining each and everything. So I think that's how it should be. All right. So, Poonam, there's another question that if someone's grant is partially funded by the federal government, but their country is no longer on the skills list, do they still need a waiver?
Um, part Depends. That's the short answer, because all these questions are each individual situation is very fact specific. It depends on what is it that was the source of funding. Again, if the grant is partially funded by the government, but it is not indicated on the DS 2019 that the source is a federal government, like you're supposed, like for instance, I'll give an example of a researcher. If a researcher is sponsored by a university and the university receives some government funds or grants and chooses to pay out of that grant instead of their own funds, then that would not be considered funded by the federal government, because the university chose to use the grant funds instead of using their own funds. In this situation, I assume the DS 2019 will indicate that there was no government funding for the J1 program. Contrary, another example would be a situation where a person is coming to work at a government facility and is 100% funded, that program is 100% funded by the government, then in that case, they would need a waiver because there is no discretion and there is clarity on the source of funds and the reason for that sponsorship. So, depending on where the fund is coming from, it may or may not impact whether your country is on the waiver on the skills list. And as I mentioned, the best way to get clarity on whether or not you're subject to the 2-year home residency requirement is to request an advisory opinion from the Department of State.
Absolutely. All right. So now I would like to, Poonam, as we also have some viewers, but I would also like to ask questions from our Facebook group as well, because there are viewers who keep on posting questions. So here's a question from our viewer that is, my wife's a citizen and I am on J1 visa pursuing residency. If I have to pursue a fellowship, can I apply for a work permit and then do my waiver after my fellowship? If yes, then what's the process?
So, quick question, Sam. When you say this is from your Facebook page, is this specific to a country, the Facebook page, or is it a generic Facebook page that anyone from any country can post? And the reason I ask is because the answer is country specific.
Absolutely. So this is from India.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, could you flash the question back up, please? Thank you. So, in this situation, if the person is an Indian national, then, and if their fellowship and their residency is self-funded and they're not being sponsored by a government grant or government funding, then because India is no longer on the skills list, they no longer need a waiver. They can go from their residency directly to fellowship and then whatever path they want to process without any issue. And they say their wife is a citizen. Previously, they couldn't switch from a J1 to becoming a green card holder without getting a waiver. Now, because India is no longer on the skills list, they can apply for an adjustment of status as well, or any time in the process. So their path and their journey has become that much easier if this person is from India. Now, if this person was from another country who still remains on the J1 list, on the skills list, then they can continue as, I mean, they can pursue the fellowship on a J1, no problem. And they can, but they, to switch to an H1B, they would either need a waiver or they would need to complete the 2 year home residency requirement. The timing of that waiver or that home residency requirement is immaterial, uh, but it has to be before they can switch to an H1B or an L1 or another visa. But in this case, if their country is no longer on the skills list, they are able to even adjust to becoming a green card holder in the United States without anything further.
All right, I think that's great. You haven't just explained about India, but you also covered the overall aspect of the other countries as well. So I think thank you so much, Poonam, for taking that up and explaining that in detail. Moving ahead, there's another question that has been posted by one of our viewers, and can you zoom it a bit, Control?
Yes, this
Perfect.
is good.
So here's another question that hi, if anybody has an idea, I am now on J status and pending asylum at the same time. I'm still maintaining the legal J status. My DS 2019 is gonna expire December 2025. There's a possibility to extend it for one more year. So my question is, can I still apply for DS 2019 extension while on pending asylum? I'm trying hard to keep my lawful status as long as I can. Thank you in advance. Yeah.
Great question. The one caveat I will mention here is I am not an expert in asylum. I do not practice asylum law. So I cannot speak to the asylum aspect of this question, but I definitely agree with them that they should maintain their legal status for as long as it's possible and continue to switch status if needed to another non-immigrant status, if possible. If they have the possibility to extend it, they should all by all means extend their J1. Again, if they are from a country which is no longer on the skills list, they can switch from a J1 to an H1B or another visa status or to a green card based on another basis other than asylum. Um, because I assume, based on what I've heard, that there is a long wait time to get green card through asylum. So, but if their country is no longer on the skills list, they have all of these options open to them that may not previously have been. But obviously, if their country continues to be on the skills list, then their options may be slightly limited depending on the country of birth.
Absolutely. Depends upon the country. And I think here's another question that I would like to cover. And then, yeah, I think this we took. Yeah, this is the one. So, Poonam, here's another question that I was a J1 visitor to US in 2017 for 3.5 months, and my visa was subject to 212E 2-year rule. I then moved back to my home country. In 2021, I came back again to US for my PhD on a J1 visa, which will expire in 2025. My recent visa is also subject to 212E 2-year rule. So do I still need to go back to my home country to do the 2-year rule again, or can I get a job? Also, this time my dependent is with me on a J2 visa. If I get a waiver, will she get a waiver too? So there are two questions basically in this comment.
Yes, multiple questions here, multiple aspects to this question.
Yeah.
The first, the first and foremost question is, what is their nationality, right? Where are they coming from? What country are they coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Second is, for their PhD is that PhD research program funded by a government source. That's the second piece. And then the third is about their dependent on the G2. So I'll address the first one. Um, First, obviously, if the country they're coming from is no longer on the skills list, for instance, if they're coming from India, it makes sense that they came for 3.5 months in 2017 and they would have been subject to the 2 year home residency requirement, which Indians were up until December 9th of this year. And then after that, they are no longer subject to the 2 year home residency. So if their PhD, now coming to their PhD, if their PhD is non government funded, then they are no longer subject to the 2 year rule. They are no longer required to go back to their home country. They are no longer required to get a waiver if they do not are not in a program that was funded by the government. If their 2017 program was funded by the government, then they've already satisfied that 2 year home requirement when they came back because there was a gap of at least 3+ years before they came back from 2017 to 2021. The only waiver they would need, if at all, would be for their PhD program, and that would be dependent on the government funding. Now, coming to the dependent, again, if they are from a country that no longer requires a waiver, then the same applies to this dependent. The same rules apply. They are no longer subject to the waiver and no longer required to the 2 year home residency or no longer required to get a waiver. The flip side or the opposite option in this is where the person was is from a country that was subject to the 2 year home residency requirement back in 2017, and in 2024 they continue to be subject to the 2 year home residency requirement because that country did not come off the list like India and China and Brazil did, and several others, not just those three. There are about 20 plus countries that came off that list. So if their country continues to be on this J1 skills list, then before they can get a job, so again, can they continue working in a J1 status? No problem. Can they get a waiver before they get an H1B? Yes, they would need a waiver or go back to their home country for 2 years before they can come back and work in H1 or L1 status. And whatever happens with their status, the same happens to their dependent. So if they don't need a waiver, the spouse also does not need a waiver. If they need a waiver, then the spouse also needs a waiver, and they should include their spouse in the waiver application as well.
All
I know
right.
it was a long answer, but I hope it's clear, and I'm happy to clarify
That
if
was
I missed something.
absolutely needed. I think that was great. That's how the only thing that you can clear our viewers' doubt. And I'm sure that viewer whom we are going to share this link is definitely going to love it. And it's definitely going to be insightful and helpful for him. So I think, Poonam, it's already time, but we have one more viewer, Suresh Raina. So I think let's take this up, and after that, we can wrap up. So, Suresh is asking that what impact does the revised 2024 exchange visitor skills list have on J1 visa holders previously subject to the 2 year home country physical presence requirements, and how will consular officers determine applicability of this requirement moving forward?
Great. Great question, Suresh. Thanks for asking and thanks for joining the conversation. The impact is country dependent. If the country is no longer on the skills list and the program is not funded by the government, then the consular officers should no longer deny that person from getting another visa in another status uh, effective immediately because the skills list went into effect on December 9th, the day it was posted on the in the federal register, and effective immediately, anyone who was previously subject to the 2 year home residency requirement is no longer subject if their country is no longer on that skills list.
All right. So I hope Suresh you got your answer, and still, if you have any follow up or want to know more, then please feel free to post them on comment section. And not in this session, but in our upcoming show also, we are definitely going to take them up. So yeah, I think Poonam, it's almost time to wrap up, and it's 1 hour, and successfully we completed all the questions that we prepared for, and that two viewers question we also took, and the Facebook question. So I think it's a huge success because all our viewers they are happy with their answers, and you are brilliant in this. You covered all the questions. So thank you so much, Poonam, for your expertise and clarity on the topic. I think it made everything so much easier to understand. And I'm sure our audience also learned a lot from you in today's episode. So it's really a pleasure having you on today's episode, and I'm super excited to have you back in the future.
Likewise. Thanks, Sam. It's been a pleasure and great questions from everyone. So thank you and looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Poonam. And to our lovely viewers, also, thank you so much, everyone who has joined us and participated in today's episode. I hope you found this session helpful. And in case if you still have any doubt, then please feel free to post them on the comment section. We will definitely take them up in our upcoming show. Also, if anyone is navigating any intricacies of visa applications or facing legal challenges, then here is attorney Poonam Gupta's contact details. That is, email ID is info at summit-legal.com, and the website is www.summit-legal.com. So thank you so much everyone for joining us, and as always, stay informed by liking, sharing and subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show for more updates. I'm Sam signing off for now.